We're in for a real treat, and we'll hear from our presenter, Morgan Andaluz from Maui College. So I'd like to yield the floor and look forward to getting started.
Yielding the virtual floor. Thank you. I'm not teaching a Zoom class this semester, and I feel like I've already purged my brain of all the skills that you need to teach via Zoom. So I was like, oop, don't need that anymore. Of course, I probably do. Anyway, I apologize if there are any glitches in the matrix today, but thank you all for coming to this presentation. It's all about reading, and um, as the introduction said, I am at Maui College, and I'm also the co-chair of Reading Across the Disciplines. And from the very beginning, I've been interested in helping students to, I guess, learn important reading skills that are going to help them to be more successful. So it's really cool that you've all showed up today. I think that's a good sign. So much of student success is just taking a little extra initiative and showing up to these kinds of things. So the fact that you're here, I think, says that you're probably already going to be super successful. So bear with me here. I'm just going to share my screen and pull up a little presentation. And the whole goal behind this assignment is, or this presentation, is to just help you to see how valuable your time is and how important it is to just make a few small changes to the way you're approaching your, well, actually, I should say, probably a few small changes to the way that you're approaching reading assignments. That means that you're going to have more time in your life to do other things that are valuable to you equally, right? And I think a lot of times we forget that, time wasted pretending to do homework or pretending to read, it's really taking away from other important priorities that we might have in our life. So hopefully this presentation will help you a little bit in that endeavor. So if you could just really quickly in the Zoom chat, type in, what are some of the biggest difficulties that you have when it comes to reading for school? Jump on in there. Don't everybody race to the chat at once. What's the hardest thing about reading in school? Help me out. Anyone? Anyone? The time it takes to highlight points. Do we need to highlight? I'm going to put an asterisk by that. Thanks for putting that in there. Multiple choice. What, too many choices? Takes so long, right? The amount of time that it takes to actually read a text. And then you can't remember at the end. Anybody had that experience before where you just like, there goes an hour of my life I'm never getting back? Concentration, finding interest, retention, right? Yeah, I mean, this is not my first rodeo. This is something I've been talking about for a long time. I also should out myself as saying I have two kids. One of them's an adult in college, very successful at academic endeavors, and my younger child who really struggles with, I guess, motivation. she's bright enough, but she has a real hard time just caring about stuff that to her seems boring. So yeah, motivation is a tricky one. I haven't figured out how to solve that problem, but I might have some suggestions today that help you with some other things. Yeah, I think I'm seeing a lot of recurring themes, which is time spent is not equaling some kind of positive outcome. Like the more time I spend, the more I know, the more I understand, right? So maybe it's a good thing that you're here, and maybe I'll say something today, I hope I do, that helps you to feel like the time that you spend reading is actually getting you somewhere. Okay. Um, yeah. So where do we go? Yeah. Sorry. I'm switching back and forth from slides. As I said before, the time that you spend, you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. Yeah, yeah. Um, and I'm not sure that highlighting is the best way to go about comprehending better. I'm gonna circle back to that in this presentation. Um, so think about this. What in your life serves you and what doesn't? What are you focusing on in your day, right? That is contributing to your health and wellness and your betterment? And what are the things that are maybe detracting from that? And I bring this up before I even start talking about reading because I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is your cell phone. You know, mine is actually buzzing right here next to me as we speak. I remembered today to turn it off. But I think that you might find that establishing a healthier relationship with the technology in your life can help you to then be a more successful reader. Yeah. Our time on this earth is finite. I'm experiencing like midlife crisis, I guess you could say. And I'm really starting to realize we only have so much time, right? So the time that we have, what do you want to spend it on? What's important? Your family. What's important? I guess school, because you want to, you want to get a degree, you want to do something with your life. You want to maybe make more money so that you can travel, right? So just some small changes in your life can really make a big difference. I strongly recommend setting some boundaries if you haven't already with your cell phones. And there are a lot of, ironically, apps that you can use. A lot of phones these days are coming with tech minders, right? And just across the board, I strongly recommend using those focus apps on your desktop and on your cell phone so that you're not getting pinged with distractions while you read. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. But I really, really recommend um, setting up some space for what we would call tech hygiene. You know, we have to have our cell phones, right? They're kind of an appendage, but we don't need them to be controlling our lives. There's a lot of great resources online, and maybe the Success Connection uh, could do a workshop about, like tech hygiene. That would be helpful.
Yes, we
No.
would love to do that topic. So yeah, let's make
Yes,
it happen for
actually,
next
Emma
semester.
White, I recommend. She does a whole spiel on it, and it's been so helpful, I think, to a lot of people. So you might reach out to her if she's here.
Awesome.
Right.
If you wanted me to help with the chat, I can also
Oh
chime
yeah,
in with the chat too.
thanks. When I'm doing my slides, it's kind of hard to check the chat. So if another question comes up, please stop me. Yeah.
Yeah, we have
So
a few comments. Did you want me to read those or
yeah.
okay. So a student says that it can be too time consuming. They'd like to know how to avoid this.
Yeah.
Our workshops are being recorded, so I've also placed a link in the chat. Someone's requested to see the recording, and we'll be able to upload that today, and you can go back to the link. There's another comment. I love how engaged everyone is. on
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, on one of our other success workshops, they showed us how to do cell phone settings to study. So
Yeah.
no notifications for an hour and a half. Awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that concludes our comments so far. Keep them
Yeah,
coming,
great.
y'all.
Oh, thank you for doing that. I love having somebody look at the chat room because otherwise I get sucked into looking at the slides. But so moving on to kind of strategies, the first thing I want to say is if you're doing something that works for you, keep doing that. right? But the chances are that you're here in this workshop because whatever you've been doing either is not working or it's not good enough. So any changes that you make, first reflect on, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and all those other cliches that we can say. Focus on the things that you're doing that you think really are effective and have been effective, and get rid of the things, making small changes that you think, maybe I need to try something new, and see how that goes. Yeah, there are a lot of things that I'm going to tell you in this workshop that you probably all already know, but I'm going to say it anyway, just in case, because you know what they say about assuming. I don't want to assume. And when I was in college, many, many centuries ago, I did not know any of this stuff. And I was an English major, so I was reading a lot, reading, and wasting a lot of my time and not understanding. Of course, I kind of learned by trial and error, and I wasn't really good at reaching out for help. But what I have learned since then is that if I had reached out for help sooner, I probably would have saved myself so much stress, and I probably know a lot more now. I would recall stuff that I read. So again, good that you all are here, but it helps a lot to have a distraction free place to study. I don't know how many of you have a fixed place where you study in your household, but that can really be, understanding the way our brains work. We kind of we like to reinforce habits, right? Good habits and bad habits. So if you have the good habit of sitting in a place that's a little comfy, but not too comfy, so you don't fall asleep, right? Sitting in a place where you're not heavily associating that place with other activities like your bed. I don't know how many of you have ever like tried to read your homework in bed. It's a terrible idea. Don't do it. You will fall asleep, right? So all of those things that we just small things like having the right environment can make a big difference. Now, some of us are parents, some of us are caregivers for elderly, caregivers for small people running around in our environment, and we don't have as much as the luxury of, all the flexibility to just have a nice, quiet, Pinterest worthy desk. I get that, you know. But to the degree that it's possible for you, try to have a place that's free from distraction. Have a schedule that is repeated weekly in small breaks. When's your best time of the day to study? Everybody's different, right? Many times, the time that we have the most energy is not the time that we're setting aside to study and read. Most of the people that I talk to tell me they study at the end of the day. When they come home, the kids are asleep, the house is quiet. I know that was true for me when I was studying with children in my life. And the facts are that when you're exhausted, you're not going to retain the information. So, what can you do? Ask a family member to watch the kids. Shuffle your work schedule around. Do something so that at least small pockets of time are spent reading when you're most alert. Time of day, energy level from food and nutrition, all of those things really do have a subtle but important impact on your ability to retain information. Right? I'm giving you a lot of things to do, but these are really small changes. And if you do a bunch of small things, that percentage, like, 1% here, 1% here, 1% here, added up, 5-10% better. So give it a try. We like habits and we like patterns. So, every Thursday night, 15 minutes. Every Sunday night, 30 minutes, and that's something you can use your phone for. You can set up like a little reminder app that says, oh, it's time to read for biology or whatever. Okay. Here are some things that don't work. And again, I'm going to put a little asterisk by these things. Using a highlighter for print texts or a digital highlighter for e-texts, if that's all you're doing, is a terrible idea, right? And I don't know who's reading physical texts anymore. It seems like I went to sleep and woke up after COVID and then everything went digital, right? But if you're somebody who's using a highlighter and this is you, you're reading, by the end of the, experience, your pages are wet. No, you're just using the pen as a scanner, really, right? That's not going to help you to improve your comprehension. You're doing the I'm reading pantomime. Hey, everybody, let's sit down for 30 minutes and pretend to read, shall we? Right? And that's like, no, you're not reading. You're pretending to read because none of the information that's on those pages is going anywhere in here. Right. So let's avoid the I'm reading pantomime, right? Don't try to rush academic reading because go slowly. That's why it's so important that you break it into small segments. Yeah, don't try to cram the night before, right? We know that that's not how our brains work. Anything that you put in short-term memory, all it takes is one little startle or one distraction, and it just in your body just goes into reboot, blank screen, right? And the notifications on the cell phone are also the death of reading comprehension. So if you're doing any of these things, I'm going to say stop. And I'm going to put a little asterisk by the highlighter thing because I'm going to come back to how you can use highlighting effectively. There is a way. Okay, so here are some things that I suggest that you do. Use a focus app, and it seems like a lot of you are already doing that. So an app that shuts down any notifications from your, cell, whatever. Do you struggle with procrastination? I mean, is even the act of sitting down to read something that you put off? Doing something like setting up a reminder on your phone to say read for 15 minutes and then telling yourself you're only going to read one page, right? Make it very easy. I'm just going to read. I'm going to sit down right now. It's my scheduled reading time. I'm going to read one page. And if I don't want to keep reading at the end of one page, I can get up and walk away. And sometimes just pushing through that initial, it's almost like a membrane that prevents us from, it's a little feeling of discomfort that prevents us from sitting down and doing our work. Just pushing through that and making yourself get started sometimes creates a kind of forward momentum that makes it harder for you to stop. Not always. Sometimes you sit down and you read a page and you're like, oh, this isn't working for me. In which case, if you've broken your reading assignment down into a bunch of smaller windows, missing one here and there is probably not going to kill things for you. Preview your reading assignments. So as soon as you get an assignment, if you have a syllabus from your professors, if you have, reading goals every week, and spend a little time not reading, but just previewing, where you know exactly how many pages you have to read this week. I have to read 30 pages. About how long do you spend to read 3 pages? Break it into small windows, 3 pages here, 3 pages there. Yeah, setting up reminders again in your calendar so that you're doing 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's kind of like Pomodoro technique, right? Short, small windows. You can use an approach like scan, question, read, and recall. That's really useful, right? So that's where you're predicting you have 10 pages. Let's say the chapter is 10 pages long. You scan 10. You come up with a list of questions for yourself based on maybe the lecture in class or based on the headings of the text and the intro at the beginning, like, what am I going to learn today? How does this particular chapter connect with what I read last time? How can I apply this information in my life? Any opportunity to kind of connect the material to something tangible and to your lived experience is going to help it stick in your brain, right? And then a lot of opportunities as you're reading to recall. Some of you might have small people in your life or friends and family that are good listeners. And this recall thing is great, especially for parents. You can ask the kids in your life, or you can talk to them about what you've read and explain it. Teaching other people concepts is one of the best ways to recall information. So let's just say you read a chapter in your psych class about something related to psych. It's been so long since I've taken psych, nothing's coming to me. Pavlov's dog, let's say, right? And then you're going to explain that whole experiment to a kid in a way that the kid understands and doesn't run away from you. Make sure you get permission from the kid's parents if they're not your kid. I'm going to explain experiments to you, right? And just the act of having done that is going to mean that the information is going to stay in your brain. Read for big ideas first in the text, and then kind of go back if you need to a second time and look for the smaller stuff. This is especially important where, you know, you're taking a content course where you're having to learn things like, you know, about cell walls and how, you know, materials are transferred and all of that stuff. Read for the big ideas first. What's this about? Oh, it's about, you know, cells and how cells reproduce. And then list underneath, you know, in some kind of note-taking fashion, some kind of hierarchy, big idea to smaller idea. And organizing things is another way that your brain tends to hang on to stuff. You're making things sticky, and that's what you want to do. I was just telling my kid the other day too, she has a hard time with, you know, reading pantomiming. And I said, why don't you just pretend like you're having a conversation with the author of the text? Stop every 2 or 3 sentences and ask a question. Really? How do you know that? You know, why do you think this? And just doing that can help you to stay engaged. If you're a lit major or if you're somebody who is in humanities, actually, for anybody, you might try annotating. And annotating is where you write in the margins, write these questions in the margin of your textbook. If it's not a physical textbook, maybe you write in the margins on a piece of paper that you keep by the computer. I think handwritten notes are the best for this. Does anybody have any questions about any of the techniques that I've been listing here? No? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Sorry about the blurry image. I kind of blew it up a little bit too much. But here's an example of Cornell notes, which I'm sure there's probably a success strategies workshop on note taking, right? But here's an image of Cornell notes. And the thing that I like about all of these note taking techniques is that you can make them your own, right? Like you don't have to follow the rules. Your notes can be Cornell-ish, right? But maybe you do something like you ask questions of the author here, right, on the left-hand side. And then over here on the right-hand side, where it says things like keywords and ideas, you put your response, your connection, right? Diagrams. If you're somebody who's very visual, maybe you use this as an opportunity to, if you're talking about cell walls, draw a little picture yourself. I mean, I know a lot of times the texts that you have images associated with the texts, but drawing the picture, the act of drawing the picture yourself is going to help that information stay sticky in your brain, right? And you can always use this little box at the bottom. What I like to do for Cornell notes is come back later and use this area for review. So like maybe let's say I did these, filled in these 2 boxes for the chapters on Tuesday, and then I come back on Thursday and I write some comments down here that summarize the information. And then I'm creating a process where I'm circling back and I'm circling back, right? Yeah, and here's another example of handwritten notes. And, you know, if you're kind of a Pinterest geek, you can go to Pinterest and look up all the cool different ways to take notes. Some people like to use some kind of color coding. I think this was from a nursing web page A lot of nurses realize, oh crap, I have to do a lot of really difficult reading. And so they play around with different note taking techniques. But if you know you're going into a certain field, you can actually go to Pinterest and probably go to Google Images and just search like note taking for pre-med or note taking for arts and humanities and look at some of those different examples. And, note taking can happen from a lecture. Some of you might be taking notes for this, but note taking should also happen from printed texts, videos, podcasts, any resources that you're using. So, note taking is a great way to assist with your reading comprehension. If you're not taking notes, you might think, oh gosh, this is really slowing me down. If you're not taking notes, you might just be wasting time, right? So maybe spend a little time to gain quality. Another big thing that we don't talk about a lot, but that is super important, is the role that vocabulary plays in your ability to comprehend. Some of you might be studying in fields where the vocabulary is a little bit ahead of where you are personally, right? And that is when comprehension can be a real struggle. So if this is you, if you're somebody who has a hard time just even understanding the words on the page, know that there's not an easy solution for this. It's not a quick snap your fingers kind of thing. It's a long-term commitment to improving your vocabulary. This is a separate issue from just the kind of reading comprehension issues that you have because of distraction or because of focus, right? This is more about you just plain don't understand the words on the page. And it is one of the single highest indicators of success. The higher your vocabulary, the better your comprehension. It makes sense, right? Like if you're not understanding every third or fourth word, of course you're not going to understand the bigger idea together. So you have to make a commitment now and early, I think, in your college learning experience. No shame if you know your vocabulary is terrible right now, but it is a shame if you just ignore it and try to move through life um, and and function in a college environment with a bad vocabulary, because you really will struggle. So plan now, start small, dedicate yourself to learning 1 or 2 new words per day. Keep a notebook, keep a vocabulary journal, right? And the more you know, and the more you stop and look up words, the more you will be exposed to new words, right? This is especially important if you're in a field that is like vocabulary, jargony based, like the sciences, right? Mathematics. There's a lot of words in math and words in science that you only use a certain way in those fields. Medicine, you're going to have to learn anatomy terms. They're not even in English, right? They're in Latin. So you need to make a little extra effort, and time spent now investing. It's kind of like investing in the bank. Time spent now investing in expanding your vocabulary will mean not that tomorrow your reading is easier, but in 3 years, your reading is easier, or in 2 years, reading is easier. The more you know, the better you get.
Hi,
There are
Morgan.
apps. Yeah.
These are such good tips. I wish I had these when I was a student. And because of that, we have some really great questions in the
Oh,
chat.
goodness. Okay.
And
I'm just
one
scrolling
student
through.
is wanting to know, how do I know what to take notes on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the best way to take notes is in a notebook. And I don't know about you, but I have those old composition books that my kids wrote like 1 or 2 pages of and then never filled. And just do it that way, because our brains are still hardwired to, have that pen to paper tangible experience. I know a lot of people, especially the neat freaks out there, the people who are very precise, like to take notes on computers in Google Docs. And that can be effective too. I just think that our brains haven't quite made the leap to digital as far as the note taking goes.
Hi,
Um,
Rowan. Does that
yeah.
answer your question? Okay, sounds like it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So whatever you do, just like be honest with yourself about whether or not the things that you're doing, are really working and helping you. There are some great vocab learning apps for medical terminology, for nursing. So, it's about making a small investment of time now. And again, it's like you're putting money in the bank and it's building up. Keep an old school vocabulary notebook, right? Just find an old notebook, recycle it. Yeah. I don't know how many of you are using e-texts or IDAP or, OER resources. That means like PDFs that you're having to read on your computer. There are some tools like Instapaper and Digo. There are lots of apps that are supposedly like tools that you have on top. And a lot of the newer texts, e-texts have great note-taking functions, right? You just have to use them. And I think a lot of times reading is enough of a barrier in itself to students that I don't know, there's a little level of shame around like not wanting to interact with a digital text or not knowing how. And so they don't ask for help. And my recommendation to you would be to, if you can, print some of the pages out. A lot of schools, the learning centers will print for free a number of pages. You could just maybe print the review questions or, anything that gives you a tangible aspect of the book that you can be taking your notes in. The other thing that you should do is look around you and see who is doing really well, who's kicking butt in your class, right? Who's doing real well with the digital text, and ask them to show you what they're doing, because every class is going to be a little different. Every e-text is a little different. Some of them are better than others, right? And who knows, maybe there's somebody in your class who has figured something out that you never would have known if you didn't just ask, right? The other thing to be concerned about with e-text is eye strain, right? And there's a lot of, I think a lot of us are going to go blind sooner than we would have, but you should always plan. Another reason for planning short windows, if you're using an e-text, is because of eye strain, posture problems, right? So the rule is you look up at least every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. The 20 second rule. I think you should do that anyway. Like, even just forget about eye strain. 20 minutes is probably more time than you should spend extremely focused on a screen. So just get up and walk around. Go outside for a minute, walk the dog, get a cup of coffee. Yeah. Whatever you do, weave in regular review sessions, Try to create a situation where you're circling back on stuff, circling back, in small ways. It makes a big difference. Talk to your kids, talk to your parents, talk to the people that are in your class with you about what they read. And a lot of your professors are probably setting up classes with discussions and stuff. That's why they're doing that. So you shouldn't feel like you have to recall and understand everything right after you read it. Most challenging readings involve, in an academic setting, something where you read and then you come to class and you discuss and then you listen to a lecture, right? So it's embedded in the instruction that you're supposed to be digging deeper as you go, right? But you probably have to put maybe a little more effort in on your part, or maybe instead of more effort, change your efforts, right? Make changes to the system so that the results are better, so that you're remembering more. It's not easy, and I'm almost done talking here. But I just want to say that if you practice this, you will get better at it. Like any skill, like learning how to play the piano, learning how to speak a language, reading in an academic setting is a skill, and not everybody is good at it from the beginning, right? So whatever you're doing, if it's working a little bit, make small adjustments, and with time, you will get better. Does anybody have any questions? I can pull up the chat now that I'm done. Yeah, eye strain is a big deal, huh? Yeah, the thing that I love about e-texts is that you can quickly look up words, right? There's a lot of really great tools embedded in e-texts, but then the downside is if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can't always read. So like when you're sitting in the dentist's office, if your dentist doesn't have Wi-Fi, you're stuck, right? So it's like you win some and you lose some. Anybody else have something that they want to add or a question they want to ask? Yeah, it is. It is a skill. Oh, so I appreciate all of you for coming, and I really hope that I said something that rang true, even if it's just maybe not new information to you, but it's information that you are suddenly ready to apply. I know that happens to me a lot in my life where people tell me stuff over and over, and then finally one day I'm like, hey, I should do that. Yeah. So hopefully I said something that's making you say, hey, I should try that. And I hope you have a good, safe weekend. And thanks.
Oh, that was such a treat. I learned a lot of interesting strategies that I could also use and share with students. And I feel it was a very productive session. Feel free to join us for any of our upcoming Success Connection workshops. And on next Wednesday, we'll have Michael Ishii. And if you're looking for some tips for effective argumentative writing, such as in your papers or even research papers, feel free to come back to our Zoom room and we look forward to having you. You'll see
Yeah,
a recording of today's workshop at the link that I've provided for our Writing Center YouTube channel. Have a great Aloha Friday and we'll see you soon.
I put Emma's info in the chat there for you if you want to reach out to her about the attention hygiene. She gives a great workshop, so you might reach
Oh,
out.
most definitely. Yes,
Yeah,
I will definitely get her information from the chat. And thank you so much for sharing that.
you're welcome. Thank you
Also,
for inviting me.
yeah, also we'll send out a feedback form for today's workshop. We'll send it to everyone who joined us today. And feel free to share any topics that you might like to hear about in the future or any suggestions. Also, if you're receiving extra credit for your class, you can also include your name there. So if you want to hang around and ask a question, feel free to do so. But if not, we'll see you next time.